Okay. Yes, good evening. Good evening. How are you all today?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, everyone.
Good
Well,
evening, everybody.
yes. First of all, thank you once again to our hundreds and thousands of, not hundreds of thousands, but hundreds and thousands of viewers over the last, who have joined us for the last few months. Tonight, we have a very informative show, and we want to, first of all, thank our media partners who are ZJB Radio in Montserrat, CBN Radio in Virgin Islands, PJWFE in Saba, Channel 82 in Bermuda, and I'm missing somebody. I forgot.
Did you
Live
say?
on YouTube and Facebook.
There you go.
So tonight's show, we are going to be talking about the Caribbean economy, what works for us, and EU unfair. Let me preface that unfair EU blacklisting that works against us. And we are very fortunate tonight to have one of the preeminent persons in the Caribbean who know all about this blacklisting, Miss Marla Duharan. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And also we have from Cayman Islands a financial professional, Johan Moxam. Thank you for coming on, Johan.
Thank you very much.
And I'll allow Ms. Duharan to introduce herself to the people of the Caribbean. Not that they don't know her.
Thank you, Mr. Famous. I'm from Trinidad. I'm an economist, but I live in Barbados. I've been here for just over 3 years. And I'm very passionate about the economies, of course, in this region, but also the very unjust, as Mr. Famous just mentioned, very unjust and biased treatment by the EU against all non-white small economies globally, but not just in the Caribbean globally, but there's quite a heavy presence here in the Caribbean and also in the Pacific. And so that's what keeps me up at night. Thanks for having me, by the way.
Thank you. And Johan?
Again, thank you very much for the opportunity to share a platform with Ms. Duharan. Chris, greatly appreciate the opportunity to participate. And Ms. Shaina, nice to spend time with you. I'm a financial services professional born and bred in the Cayman Islands. Based in the Cayman Islands, I'm a former managing director of a Class A bank and trust company, Merrill Lynch Bank and Trust Cayman Limited. I have over 20 years experience in financial services or offshore financial services. And right now I'm the managing partner of a firm called Laneston International Management. I just want to preface what I'm saying. I also sit on the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority Board of Directors, but tonight I will be sharing my views, my concerns, and in no way, shape, or form am I attempting to represent the views of the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority. I'm a concerned citizen who understands the importance of financial services to the Cayman Islands, but also the way that it helps our region and countries that are able to participate. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here.
Okay. So now that we have that, Ms. Duharan, could you give us a very brief overview of the economies of the Caribbean, and especially those like Bermuda, Cayman Islands, and BVI that deal with financial services?
Well, we know that the pandemic has hit all of us very hard. all economies except Guyana in this region contracted in 2020, and most continue to contract in 2021. What we're seeing is that many economies are on the upswing right now. And so recording maybe in some cases double-digit growth rates in 2022 and projected to continue to grow in 2022 at that pace. However, don't be fooled when you see 12% growth, 15% growth projected for this year for any country. It doesn't mean that the economy is booming. It means that we're kind of snapping back from the decline that we saw in 2020 and into 2021. Most countries are going to take 2 to 3 years in this region for their economies to recover to the size that it was in late 2019 or early 2020 before the pandemic hit. So in other words, most countries are going to take till 2024. Some will take even longer to get to the point where the size of the economy recovers to where it was in late 2019 or early 2020. And what we're seeing is that the countries that had adopted, that had started to roll out vaccines earlier and have the highest uptake in vaccines, they're the ones that were opening up sooner. So those are primarily the non-sovereign countries, so the overseas territories, the Dutch territories in particular. So they're the ones, you're the ones who started rolling out vaccines earlier and have the highest uptakes in general in the regional context. And so because your economies had reopened, just now I just saw an email from Curacao saying that they've done away with all of their testing requirements to land in Curacao. So these are the countries that are seeing economic activity, especially tourism and travel-related activity, get back up and running, and therefore they're the ones that are seeing their economies recover faster because they kind of started earlier. Of course, as we discussed a little bit earlier, Mr. Famous, Guyana is an outlier. It is the world's newest oil-producing country, and so their growth is well outside of what we typically see in the region. And they are one of the fastest growing economies in the world. So they're an outlier. And there are some countries like Trinidad and Tobago that were in trouble well before the pandemic hit. And so the decline that we're seeing in the Trinidad economy is pretty much unrelated to the pandemic. It was made worse, of course, by the pandemic, but not caused by the pandemic. I would say the same for the Bahamas. They were recovering from the Hurricane Dorian devastation and were hit by this pandemic less than a year after that hurricane hit them. So there were some economies that were already struggling. So I hope that gives you a broad overview that you were looking for.
Yes, thank you. And Mr. Moxam, from your vantage point, what is the overview? What is your overview of the?
Well, I just I want to thank Ms. Duharan for sharing her views regionally. From a Cayman context, we're very different from a lot of the other islands in the Caribbean because financial services has been our bread and butter. And truth be told, financial services is the equivalent of Cayman's oil. We have a rich history going back 40, 50 years of being a premier offshore financial services center. For us, we've gone through a 2-year sort of lockdown because of COVID, but financial services basically, which is the lead industry, didn't really skip a beat. We were very, very fortunate. Tourism fell away for obvious reasons due to travel restrictions and Cayman putting itself in a bubble. The development boom continued in part, but people were losing confidence with the fact that Cayman was going through a self-imposed sort of shutdown or the bubble as we call it. But financial services has carried the economy and continue to do so during the COVID sort of a pandemic, if anybody ever questioned the importance of financial services in the Cayman Islands, it is without a shadow of a doubt now the primary driver of our economy, and it represents the largest employer of locals in industry. But more importantly, it represents over the last 2 years easily over 78% of the GDP for the Cayman Islands. So our perspective or our situation is very different in comparison to a lot of other countries, whereby we've felt the knock-on effects in other industries, but financial services just kept going that way.
Okay, thank you. So what percentage of your workforce in Cayman Islands is employed in financial services?
I would think last time I saw those
directly
figures,
or indirectly?
Directly, I would go out on a limb and say that workforce is easily 3,500 jobs. The knock-on effects from that, financial services drives the housing market. It drives the entrepreneurial sort of sector as well. Restaurants, bars, all of these sort of accoutrements that you need for professionals to feel that they're in a modern sort of setting. Financial services is more than just 3,500 jobs in straight financial services. When you look at the government agencies that exist to lend support and help shape and guide industry, I would go out on a limb and say financial services probably represents 35% of the workforce in Cayman. Okay,
I'm going to circle back to you, Ms. Duharan. Yet, a lot of your work was a lot of your early work was on the TNT economy. Yet noted earlier that they were challenged prior to COVID. What were, with Trinidad and Tobago being an natural gas oil producing country, why was their economy challenged?
Well, it's interesting the way that you phrase that question. Why was the Trinidad and Tobago economy challenged?
Sorry, I'm a politician.
Given that we are an oil and gas producer, and I think your question should be, why not? Because actually, countries that produce commodities, mining-based commodities, are actually predisposed to having an underperforming economy. So it's called the paradox of plenty, or the Dutch disease. Of course, the Dutch have been cured. They no longer have this disease. So it's like a Trinidad disease or Nigeria disease or Venezuela disease. But countries that have natural resource endowments are predisposed to poor economic performance. So you're more likely to perform badly if you have natural resources than the reverse. So that's something that most people who are not from natural resource endowed countries don't really understand. They just assume that because you have all of these resources, you ought to be wealthy and things ought to be performing well in your economy, but that's not actually the case. So that's the core of what explains why Trinidad is an underperforming or an underachieving country or society, even if you want to broaden it. Because we have relatively weak institutions. And because of that, the predisposition of underperformance because of our natural resource endowment has basically ensured that we've performed badly. The countries that have natural resource endowments that perform well are the countries that have strong institutions, like Canada, Australia, Norway, or the countries that have conducted institutional reform to strengthen their institutions in the face of the challenges that they encounter as a natural resource producer. So basically what Trinidad did was, every time there was a boom in terms of the oil and gas revenues, what did Trinidad and Tobago do? We spent more. And we spent sometimes even more than we earned, even when we were booming. When Trinidad and Tobago had its highest fiscal revenue ever, in 2012 or 2013, somewhere around there, we still spent more than we earned from a fiscal standpoint that year. So that just tells you how irresponsible fiscally Trinidad and Tobago is. And that is at the core of why the economy is underperforming, because the government spends more than it earns. Right now, the government is running for the past, I think, since 2012 or 13, has been running what's called a primary fiscal deficit, meaning they're already in deficit before they even pay the interest on their existing debt. And that means you're borrowing to pay the interest on your existing debt. And that tells you that your debt level is unsustainable at somewhere around 90% of GDP. And so that fiscal irresponsibility is at the core of why the economy is underperforming. The government, for example, has crowded out private sector investment and private sector activity. The government is running an overvalued currency. So, for example, the official exchange rate is $6.80 or so TT dollars to $1 US, but the black market rate is somewhere around 8 or 9 TT dollars to $1 US, depending on who you're buying it from and what quantity. So all of these reasons, all at the core of it, however, is our natural resource endowment. That's the core of why we are an underperforming economy.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. I know you did extensive work, and I wanted the people of the Caribbean to have an opportunity to hear for themselves from you. Moving on, for smaller islands that are not naturally endowed with natural resources, we have such as Cayman Islands, BVI, Bermuda, some of the Dutch islands to some extent, Barbados. I think we have had to go into financial services as our bread and butter. As Johan had said, that is 35% of their workforce. But I'm going to let you explain, what is blacklisting? Because if I explain, I may use some profanity.
I might as well. So interestingly, the EU has done away with that terminology, blacklisting, but it is what they originally called these lists, gray and black lists of countries that they perceived to be or purport to be non-compliant with their tax guidelines and their AML CFT guidelines. And they prepared these lists. I can tell you, so the EU first published its tax blacklist of 17 non-cooperative jurisdictions for tax purposes in December 2017, and their high-risk third country list having strategic deficiencies in their regime on anti-money laundering and combating the financing of terrorism in 2015. So that's when they started publishing these lists. And interestingly, when I started looking at these lists, because Trinidad appears on both, I just looked at these lists and I thought, there's something not quite right here. Because we know that there are countries like the UK, the City of London, that is well known, and the Netherlands, for example.
You can't say that.
Sorry?
No, it's crack, no joke. You can't say that.
Oh, okay. I mean, these jurisdictions are well known for their extensive money laundering and tax evading activities. Yet I wasn't seeing any of these big, powerful countries like Switzerland even on this list. And I'm looking at the list and I'm thinking, they have these tiny countries whose names you've never even heard of. You have no idea where they are on the map. And, populations of, like Cayman, 50, 60,000 people. And I started digging into this list, and you would be surprised to know, maybe not anymore, but not one single country on either of these lists is a predominantly white country.
Sorry, could you say that again?
Not one country on either of the EU's blacklist, whether it's the tax blacklist or the anti-money laundering blacklist, not one country is a white, predominantly white country. Not one of those countries is an EU member or an ally of the European Union. So then I started digging into the methodology as to how they came up with this list. And it's really quite farcical. When you read the methodology, in the first place, they say none of our member states can appear on this list. That's the first thing. We are all exempt. So this is a list where we put other countries who are behaving, or we say are behaving badly. But again, they don't actually identify even countries outside of their membership that are known terrorist financiers. So Saudi Arabia, for example, Russia, for example, never appeared on this list. And so when you really look into the methodology, they exempt countries that are their own members. They also exempt countries based on their economic significance and economic ties with the EU. So if you are a country that the EU is heavily dependent on for trade purposes, investment purposes, or whatever the case is, you are not likely to be blacklisted because you're allies, political allies, economic allies with the EU. So you get exempted again. So then you whittle down further. So we don't put in our own members, we don't put in our friends. So who's left? Who's left are the insignificant countries, the tiny countries that, by the way, the EU doesn't just look at what the global authorities on tax, such as the OECD, say about these countries, or what the global anti-money laundering authorities, the FATF, say about these countries. So for example, you can be completely cleared by the OECD and the FATF. And the EU says, well, in addition to the OECD guidelines and the FATF guidelines, we have our own guidelines. So they have somehow decided that the guidelines put out by the global tax authorities and the global money laundering authorities are insufficient. And they've constructed their own guidelines. And they impose these guidelines on countries unilaterally, meaning that these countries never agreed to be benchmarked or to be to adhere to these guidelines. Whereas you have to be a member of the OECD's program and the FATF's program for monitoring, and you agree as a nation to do this and to be screened by the OECD and the FATF. They don't impose their screening on you. And so the EU, however, has decided that it's okay. It doesn't matter if you're not a member, and it doesn't matter that you've never agreed. We're still going to impose these guidelines on you unilaterally. And if we feel like you don't meet these guidelines, then we blacklist you. And that's in a nutshell what they've done.
Thank you. And when a country is arbitrarily, I'm going to use that word, arbitrarily blacklisted, what does that do to their economies?
Well, first of all, I don't know that I like the word arbitrary, because the word arbitrary, maybe in legal terms, has a specific meaning, but it suggests that it's almost innocent and it's not motivated by any malice, okay? And that's not what we're seeing here. This is anything but arbitrary. It is deliberate and it's strategic, what they've done, okay? So I would not necessarily call it arbitrary, but anyway, leaving that aside, what does it do to the economies? Well, in the first place, when the EU decides that they put you on their blacklist, it means you are automatically no longer eligible for any EU aid and support. So, for example, you blacklist the British Virgin Islands, and there is a massive hurricane, and everybody is sending supplies and aid. The EU will say, no, we cannot send anything because you're on our blacklist. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, and this is the most important thing right now, I'm sure you've heard of the term de-risking, where large international banks, through which our international wire transfer payments are made, these banks are obligated by the EU to conduct enhanced due diligence on all the countries that are blacklisted. So they ask more questions. They ask for, okay, so this company is sending a wire, like, let's just say here in Barbados, there's a company here that has ordered butter from France. Well, when they're paying for the butter, the bank in France now has to conduct enhanced due diligence, has to ask, who is this company? I want to see who is on the board of directors. I want to know all the beneficial owners of this company. I want to see all of their passports. I want to see all of their, just to send a wire to pay for some butter. So what it means is that trade becomes much more difficult and much more expensive because it takes longer to conduct these financial transactions, and you're charged more money for these financial transactions because the bank's not going to do this enhanced due diligence for free, right? The other thing that happens is that the banks will say, listen, this is so hard. Like, why am I doing business with this little territory that I have to go and do all of this work, and it ties up my AML staff time for maybe $5 million in business a month? This is just not worth it to me. I'm going to close off their account. I don't want to do any business with this bank in that blacklisted jurisdiction. And so that bank then gets de-risked and has to find another bank through which they can open accounts and send wire transfers to. So it affects trade, and that's for exports and imports. And you can imagine it also affects investments. But if you also get cut off from a banking perspective, which actually happened in Belize to the extent that even their central bank had no international banking at one point in time, what happens is that all of your financial services gets locked up. People who have money abroad, companies and individuals who have money abroad, no longer have access to their money. When you want to send remittances to your family back home, when you want to pay your children's school fees abroad, when you want to use your credit card, you're on a trip, everything gets locked up. And so it's debilitating because financial payments and settlement, which is why money is called currency. The original word is, it's like blood. It's what keeps the organism alive, right? And everything gets locked up, and your economy can basically suffer significant negative impacts because of that, because financial payment and settlement is now non-existent. And finally, the other thing it does, but we can't measure this, is that it creates reputational damage. And reputational risk is that, it can make or break an organization, and it can certainly make or break a small economy. When you have a bad reputation, people don't even want to come there on holiday because they have in their head, oh, this is a terrorism financing jurisdiction, or this is a money laundering jurisdiction. And so I don't want to go on holiday there. And then people are going, it's going to raise red flags. And what if my credit card doesn't work? All of these things create massive, unmeasured, undocumented, largely socioeconomic effects that make you wonder whether the EU is doing this deliberately. Now, the FATF, for example, is now doing a study looking at the quote unquote unintended consequences of FATF guidelines and imposition of their guidelines and their blacklisting, because they recognize that what has happened is that some countries that they had put on their blacklist that were de-risked, for example, have suffered these negative consequences. But what it has also done is, because you no longer have access to the international banking system, you then have to rely on cash for payment and settlement. Cash is the easiest way to launder money and to evade taxes. So the FATF realized that what they were doing was actually causing the problem that they were trying to avoid, which is money laundering and financing terrorism. By driving transactions underground, as we call it, into cash, they were creating the same problem that they were purportedly aiming to eliminate. And that's the other effect that I would highlight.
Thank you. You said something. You asked. Well, it was a rhetorical question to some extent. You're wondering if the EU are doing this deliberately, because at the end of the day, when the psyche of black and brown countries are that, oh, those people are criminals, oh, every one of them's down there laundering money or something to that effect. As you said, it makes our economies or makes our countries look less reputable, less people want to invest there. Meanwhile, as we're finding out now, countries such as the UK, for every $1 that's come through her, they had a few billion go through the UK. That's
Exactly.
certifiably illegal money. But that's my take. Johan, you want to chime in quickly?
No, I would just say the summary offered by Ms. Duharan was first class and captures, in essence, what all of us in the region are going through. But I'm just going to break it down and say this. This is all deliberate. This is all deliberate, in my opinion, and it speaks to placism and classism, because what the EU struggles with is, how do countries that have lots of sand, lots of sun, how is it we are global players in financial services without appreciating the role that we play as facilitators of global finance and the sort of product offerings that are available in the various jurisdictions? And I'm just going to say this, not to be contentious or to be bombastic, why is it the Isle of Man, Guernsey, and Jersey have never been subjected to the level of scrutiny that the Caribbean islands, Cayman, Bermuda, Bahamas, so on and so forth? Now, don't get me wrong, they understand how to play the game well with London, with Whitehall, and they also obviously have figured out how to market themselves and to communicate at an effective level with Brussels and the EU. But they are no different from us in their reliance on financial services, yet they are never the subject of any sort of negativity or blackguarding, for the want of a better Caymanian word, whereby the jurisdiction is threatened and framed up to be some sort of haven for illegal and illicit activities. So that's my view after a number of years, because the way that they frame up the argument is, you would swear that there's $1 trillion in cash sitting in a bank in the Cayman Islands somewhere. The way that the argument gets put forward is nonsensical, but it's to stimulate the sort of view of the region as being persons that are, I guess, of poor character, and just basically natives that have overstepped their mark. Because in the Caribbean, in the Cayman Islands, in Bermuda, we don't do anything different from the Channel Islands, and yet they take none of the flack or abuse or criticism that we take. The question is, why? Look in the mirror and you'll get your answer.
Okay, so that brings me to this point. In 2018, the UK government decided that they're going to put an order in council to force, I use the word force for capital F, the overseas territories to have a public registers of beneficial ownership. At the same time, the very same time, those crown dependencies weren't going to be forced to do such. Ms. Duharan, can you speak to that?
Well, I think it's similar motivation, and I think I agree with what Johan just said. that, you know, they know how to play the game. I think that this is driven by competition as well as racism and discrimination. I think that they wanted to find a way to marginalize small countries that do what we do pretty well. And they did not, as he pointed out, treat with Isle of Man, Channel Islands, Jersey, Guernsey, all of them the same way, because they were all part of the UK or the EU. But they want to eliminate us because we're eating part of their pie. The thing is, we are tiny. The combined share of global economic activity that blacklisted countries account for is less than 2% of global economic activity. So they're trying to eliminate the small ones because they want the whole pie. They don't think we deserve any of it. So to answer the question, you know, what are my thoughts on this? It's all the same approach, that there is one standard for them and another for us, and we are not given the opportunity to compete fairly. They see us as competition, and they see us as former colonies that probably don't deserve the opportunity to compete. And so they destroy us before we can make it out of the cot, basically. But I wanted to just read something here for you that the EU members of Parliament highlighted the fact that jurisdictions currently on the EU tax haven blacklist account for less than 2% of worldwide tax revenue losses. And this is according to the European Parliament in 2021. Also, this is what they're quoting, I'm quoting them. The purported essence of the tax haven blacklist seems to have been forgotten, as EU members in Parliament pointed out, by calling the EU list of tax havens confusing and inefficient. The Parliament tells it like it is. While the list can be a good tool, member states forgot something when composing it: actual tax havens. This is the EU Parliament criticizing the EU Commission's constitution of this blacklist, saying to them, hang on, first of all, the countries that you blacklisted only account for less than 2% of worldwide tax losses. And furthermore, you forgot to put in actual tax havens in this list. So even the policymakers in the European Union recognize that what they're doing is wrong. They've missed the mark, if that is what they were truly trying to do, to identify tax havens. But you see, the thing is, that's not what they were actually trying to do. If you forget what they appear to be trying to do, and you focus on what they're actually trying to do, they're actually trying to eliminate us. They're actually trying to get us out of the business that they feel is their domain, and we ought not to be playing in that sandbox.
Yes, because this takes me to a situation about 10 years ago in Antigua, where Antigua had somewhat of a gaming industry, but their banks were basically, as you say, de-risked. And the gaming industry was no longer an industry. So meanwhile, you could fly to New York or wherever and do the same thing.
Yep.
So the next question is, I go to these CARICOM conferences, and every year it's okay, who got blacklisted? No. And the CARICOM, they write a letter to the EU saying, no, this is unfair that XYZ country got blacklisted, and we urge you to reconsider. They talk about hiring a lawyer to represent all the CARICOM nations, but it still goes on. And in Bermuda, in 2019, Bermuda was put on the blacklist, not because they found any money laundering here or anything of that, because there was a typo on our annual forms that had to get submitted. A typo. We got blacklisted for 3 to 6 months because of a typo. Couple months later, I think Cayman Islands ended up on a blacklist. And so the question now is, what do we have to do collectively to, I don't say avoid or get circumnavigate being blacklisted, if there's anything at all?
First of all, I find it very disappointing that as blacklisted countries and even as regional upstanding citizens, we do not come together meaningfully to push back on the EU. We leave it to individual territories to deal with it on their own. And yes, CARICOM will issue a communique condemning the actions of the EU, but it's not strong enough. I think if all of the countries came together from the Pacific and from the Caribbean and agitated and protested, I think that there is a chance. For example, if you appeal to the United Nations, you appeal to the WTO, somebody is going to hear you. But when each individual little tiny micro state appeals individually, it's noise. It's white noise. So I feel like that's the first thing we need to do. We need to come together as a region, whether or not we're blacklisted, but because our brothers and sisters within the region are blacklisted, we all need to come together and present a unified position to the European Union and to the United Nations, for example, to seek some sort of recourse. The second thing I think we need to do is take diplomatic action. Why not expel your EU ambassador and say, I'm sorry, this is unjustified. I'm doing everything I can. I have satisfied the FATF and the OECD. And you are not satisfied because you are asking for things that even your own member states don't do. That is unfair. You need to get out of my country. But we don't have the courage to do these things because we're small and we are insecure. Maybe it's post-colonial PTSD. I am not sure. But why are we not brave enough to say, this is wrong, you cannot treat me like this and have a presence in my country? Get out.
Thank you.
I like that. I agree with that. That should be the strategy.
As a corollary, I think what's important is that we don't see ourselves as our brother's keeper. Mm-hmm. So what happens is the competition is so fierce that in Cayman, for instance, industry comes together when there's a crisis. Outside of that, it's every man for himself, which is unfortunate. Yes. Now, take that small level of politics with a small p and apply that to, are we really prepared as leaders within the countries, heads of states, to say, listen, we're going to put aside our competitive nature because revenue is all that we care about, because the more revenue you get, the bigger the roads, the more schools, the hospitals, so on and so forth. We need to understand that ultimately one of the strategies has to be preparing yourself for the eventuality of a legal challenge by having strength in numbers. You can't tell me that Cayman and Bermuda shouldn't be working, for instance, because I do business with Bermuda a lot. That's what I'm saying that. Or the region shouldn't be trying to figure out how we protect our own interests and the industry that provides so much opportunities for our people, but more importantly, revenue, because tourism is really fickle. We've seen that, but the one constant and the one thing that drives other industries is your financial services. But we need leadership that need to humble themselves and appreciate. We will only be able to make sense of nonsense by working together and demonstrating that a unified front is the only option available to us.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anything you want to add, Shaina?
No, I completely agree. I mean, it falls right in line with our tagline for the program and the intent that we have, that, through this process of education, that persons start to understand that we are much more stronger. We have more capacity to push up against these double standards that, Marla is so cleverly articulating that exist in the global economy. Because, first it was agriculture, and then they went after financial services, and they will continue basically the press. There's no end game for them until we are out of business. And that's what I think a lot of our viewers need to really appreciate, that is what they're after. They're after the industries, and however we survive after the fallout, is basically on us. So even though they are the administering powers for us as overseas territories, just from a humanitarian standpoint, it's like there's no compassion in here. This is all strictly business, and they're out for blood.
And if I might add, just because I need to leave shortly, the thing is, I agree completely with what Johan is saying, and I feel like there should be some legal recourse that should be pursued collectively. And I just want to read something that the European Parliament issued in a communique in 2021. They said EU member states should also be screened to see if they display any characteristics of a tax haven, and those falling foul should be regarded and listed as tax havens too. So even the EU Parliament is recognizing and acknowledging the double standard that is being displayed by the EU Commission's blacklisting. That tells you that you have a legal leg to stand on, because they have themselves, the policymakers themselves, have acknowledged that we are not applying our own standards to our own member states, and that's not fair. And so if they themselves have recognized that this is unfair, why is it that our countries have not come together, found a law firm that will represent us collectively, and taken them to court over this action? Why is it that we are just sitting, waiting for the next gray list and blacklist to then jump up and down, pass regulatory and legislative amendments, comply, get taken off if we're lucky, and then they change their requirements and you get blacklisted again? Because that's what happens, It's as though we are deer in headlights and we're blinded and we're frozen and we're not able to react collectively. It's quite distressing for me and heartbreaking to see.
Well, I want to thank you for your expert analysis, and more importantly, thanks for your frankness, because many people who are in positions of influence are afraid to say what you said.
Well, I'm not in a position of influence, so I guess I could say whatever.
Oh yes, you are.
So, but I just want to say thank you very much, everyone, for having me tonight. And I think that what you're doing is really important work, highlighting and ventilating these issues and making sure that people understand just how unfair this is and just what the reasons are. It's not that we ourselves are offside and we are non-compliant. We are, but we are being marginalized by the EU that wants to basically have the whole pie and not share it with us. That's in essence what it is. And I just want to say thank you for ventilating this, and good luck with the rest of the show.
Thank you. Everybody, a round of applause for Ms. Marla Duharan.
Thank you. Bye.
We'll be posting some of your especially the one on Vanuatu on our Facebook page, so people can get that's a great summation of what the EU has been doing to overseas territories.
Thank you very much, Mr. Famous. Thanks for the opportunity. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
All right, good night.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Welcome, Eden.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Chris. Apologies to everyone. I'm really sorry I missed her section there. Miss Marla is incredible. But I just came from my son's practice that I had to help coach, and so apologies for being late to to the show here.
I like
Thank
your
you,
new
Johan.
look, Eden.
What's that?
I like your new look. Oh, Eden, this is Johan. Johan, that's Eden.
Very nice to meet you.
Nice to finally meet you, sir.
So we want to recognize. I'll let you do the work, Eden. You've been
to recognize our partners who are getting the message out all across the Caribbean region and the territories. ZJB Radio and I cannot see it now all of a sudden. What is going on here? There we go.
Wait a minute. What we do? You changed it.
It's the ZJB Radio, and we have Radio Saba celebrating its 50th anniversary. Radio 90.9 FM, CBN, the Caribbean Superstation. Channel 82 in Bermuda, Radio Turks in Caicos, and CMR right here in Grand Cayman. Thank you so much to all our media partners for helping get the conversation going all across the territories and throughout the Caribbean, and keeping this discussion expanding as we try to unite and inform the people of the OTs.
Yes, indeed. Johan, the floor is yours now, my brother.
I'm assuming we're wrapping up.
No, we got another half an hour or so.
No, I budgeted till 7:30. I can give it to 7:35. So
okay, well, I give a 5-minute summation.
Tonight, I again thank you so much for the opportunity to have a candid discussion with people that care about the issues. The work that you guys do at Territories Talk is incredible. I don't miss the show. I'm always watching, but we spend so much time living our day-to-day lives in a bubble. It's fantastic to hear some of the same issues that impact us all spread throughout the region. And then the fact that we're finally able to come together, we can agree to disagree, but ventilate the issues in a way that breaks it down for the common person so that they don't feel like, oh, it's a Cayman issue, or it's a Bermuda issue, or it's a BVI issue, or Anguilla issue. You know what I mean? So what you guys do is invaluable to educating and enlightening the people on your islands, the people throughout the region. I pay a lot more attention to regional politics and regional issues, especially in the Eastern Caribbean, as a result of this show. And I think that's a credit to you guys, the vision, and your partnership. Your sponsors and partners who help disseminate the message via various platforms. You guys are doing a fantastic job, and I'm just proud that I was able to sit here, work with Miss Duharan. Eden, for the record, she said that I was right on 3 occasions, so you can never argue with me again about anything. Okay.
You got it. You got it.
And is there a certain lady who has recently have a new position you want to give a shout out to?
All the best of luck to Queen P. To my missus. She's taking a senior strategic advisory role in the Premier's office. She's going to make us proud. She gets it and she cares. So hopefully she'll be able to bring the different strands and visions together. But the most important thing is she's a better listener than me. She's far more patient, and she cares about the issues that impact every single Caymanian person. And those issues, no doubt in my mind, will be similar to the issues impacting our brothers and sisters throughout the region. So best of luck, P. Love you plenty. You're everything.
And on that note, is there a specific group you would like to give a shout out to?
The Territories Talk team. And,
no, not us. Somebody else, some other group.
Another group. All the rabid Liverpool supporters out in the Caribbean.
No, bro, no.
Had to get that. Had to get
no,
that.
No, there's a specific group, WhatsApp group. Very lively.
To the CPR massive, we have proven in the Cayman Islands that change is possible by people working together, coming from different perspectives, platforms, backgrounds, but united in the understanding that people power is real and it can move mountains. If not for people like Eden, myself, and hundreds of others dedicated volunteers, the Cayman Islands would be having built right now and possibly bankrupt a $400 million cruise berthing facility. We asked all the right questions, we demanded answers, and we held a government accountable. We took them to court, we challenged them, and we proved them to be economical with the truth, liars, more times than not, and bullies. I'd never seen a situation
You must not say, honorable member, you mustn't say liars, you must say misleading parliament.
They were fantastic at spending large amounts of money to mislead the public.
Very good at that.
It took people like Eden who just started asking the right questions. And it's funny, we all live in a bubble, but on major national issues, we came together. And it is proof to me, if we can do it here, we can do it in Bermuda, we can do it in Anguilla, we can do it throughout the region, because every single person that puts themselves up for elected office is answerable to us, the people. So we must never lose sight of that and lose hope and say it's impossible. We pulled off the impossible, and that can be done in any other island, so long as you have unity of purpose and respect for your fellow teammates in the struggle.
And shout out to Miss Shirley.
Definitely.
She was a national hero. National hero.
It was her mom's
another
birthday
fantastic
recently, right?
panelist as well.
Yeah, she was on before.
Yeah, it was Miss Shirley. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Miss Shirley's mom's birthday was recently.
Yes, that was this weekend. I think it was. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's funny, right? We think that we're different. We think that the issues are different from one island to the next.
Yeah.
But a nation of wolves will destroy all, led by wolves, will destroy all the sheep. We've chosen to stand up, to ask questions, to hold people accountable, and we will not go gently into the night, because it's funny, when you become a parent, everything matters to you. When you're by yourself and you don't have any other responsibilities, yeah, I hear it, but now that I have my own family, it matters. And somebody needs to be able to explain to me why we're doing it, why it costs that much, and really and truly, whose agenda are they driving? Because if the majority of the people aren't benefiting, we're doing the wrong things.
Yeah. All about priorities.
And it needs to be transparent. That's what was really amazing to me about what I saw in CPR, was that Johan has a set of expertise that I don't have when it comes to looking at the case from a financial angle and asking certain questions. I might have another set of skills and the ability to look at it from another angle and ask a different set of questions. And that was that whole thing about putting aside differences and having people like Linda and Shirley, who were both panelists on this show, who are unafraid. And they're if they were the last ones speaking the truth, they'd still be speaking the truth and still asking the questions. And really, that's what it takes. When you're determined as one person, you can make a big difference. When you're determined together, then you change history. And that's what CPR did. So good on you, Johan.
No, it's good on us, on everybody involved, and Chris for supporting us from abroad. But I'll say this: what happened was unprecedented. They never saw that many people from different stratospheres of or stations in life, white, black, green, purple, male, female, from Mars, you name it. We asked questions that related to the environmental impact, the financial impact, and the socio-economic impact. Those three things impact all of us, but it was the first time that a government had to deal with every type of Caymanian working in unison. And I would encourage residents of your territories, it doesn't matter what party you support. Is it good for the country? Is it good for the next generation?
Right.
Are you going to be ending up paying for a massive project that benefits a select few people because they happen to be financiers of a party? They ran into a buzzsaw because they never saw that coming. We had never seen that level of public unity amongst the mass of Caymanians that happened. Lifelong friendships were developed as a result of this mission. I can't sing, I have no rhythm, but if Eden's in a fight, I'm in the fight with my brother, because when I needed somebody with me, he was there. And it's funny, you can say that about 50 people, 100 people, 200 people. That's what we created, and that's what I think basically helped change out the government in 2021.
Yeah.
Their lack of respect for us as citizens, but their lack of respect for the fact that you had a united force and wave of people just coming at them, demanding the answers that they could not afford to give us.
And when they
shout
didn't
out
want
to Emily as well. She was a guest on her as well.
That's right. Yeah. And when they wanted to stop, at one point the premier even said, "We're done answering questions now," and we were like, "No, you're not. You're not done." And the whole country got to see that. And in a different Cayman, it would have been like, "Oh, okay, well, I guess they're done now. We'll let them go on their way." And so we have a lot of major works coming up now, and the ground is already laid down for people to ask intelligent questions, to know where they can go and get information from, to know how to circulate information, to know how to pick apart at the details of these different things that are coming up. We have, major moves happening in renewable energy, major infrastructure changes happen. And now the people are much more prone to say, hey, I saw something about that. I'm interested in this. I'm going to keep posted on this. I'm going to get information on this. I'm going to ask questions about this. And the culture is here now to hold accountability. And it's an uphill battle, and everyone has to stay determined. But that change has been laid down. And I think based on our show, like Johan is saying, this is something that is coming across the OTs and the region, our awareness that we need to get more regional. We need to know our neighbors. We need to have a little better idea of what's happening in Bermuda or in BVI or in Turks and Caicos, and understand that our issues are not dissimilar.
So I have a question for you guys in terms of where there's this shift now that you're saying is happening in terms of your civil society being a lot more vocal as well as active. Do you think that is a result of the pandemic situation where people became like hyper focused, and so we really started to tune into, what things should be priority for us right now, and rather than, the busyness of life being distracted, I find that, one of the things here is, people become really, I guess, contained, almost as if you're living in a bubble within your society and not paying closer attention to things that are affecting you until it actually, smacks you aside the face, and then it's like, hey, what happened there? But by then that train has already left, and sometimes we can't pull these things back.
I'll just start off by saying, and then I'll depart. I think our movement started back in 2017, 2018, when the PR campaign about what is good for us without asking us what we want. And then once the misinformation started being disseminated about, it's not going to cost the government anything. Nobody builds you a $350, $400 million dock for free. There is no such thing as a free lunch. And anybody that is prepared to do so, just know that the people and the natives of that country are going to end up paying through the nose for it. So our awakening started in about 2018. And once we figured out that the government were committed, the previous PPM-led Unity government, led by Sir Alden McLaughlin and his team, once we figured out that they were going to pursue this no matter the cost, to spend $11 million on a PR campaign that was essentially a misrepresentation of the facts, that goes to show how committed they were. But they didn't think that we had the intestinal fortitude and the strength of purpose and unity to drive them back and embarrass them. Because by the time we took them to court, and Shirley, who led the charge in that, again, national hero in my eyes, a great friend that I would do anything in this world for. But once people understand, you don't need to worry about this by yourself or at the water cooler. You have like-minded people. I'll give you an example. I want to swim in crystal clear waters because that's how I grew up. Eden, Linda, Shirley, the environmentalists and marine sort of people involved in CPR, they taught me more about the blue economy because Johan Moxam never paid attention to any blue economy. I thought it was a drink, okay? And then from there, I focus in on what are the true costs of this project to us long term? And once we caught them in the lie, the educational process was incredible, whereby there are things that Eden talks about now today that I can say to you. I go and I try to do a little bit of research so that when I get with them, I can ask a sensible question and not look like a complete muppet, because they have proven themselves to be champions of wellness and the environment and peace of mind, for the want of a better word. And once you go into a fight lockstep with your brother and sister, you will never let anybody mess with them, because nobody believed in us, but we believed in ourselves, and we got the right results for the country. It wasn't for me, it wasn't for Eden, but I know our children will be grateful that we did it.
Yes, definitely.
You know?
Yes,
so with that said, I want to thank you guys. I'm going to leave now. Happy to come back at any time. Please keep up the incredible work that you guys do.
Thank you.
I'm a big fan, and I wish you guys all the best and continued success. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Two requests, Johan.
Yes, sir.
First request: can you ask your Miss P to get the Big P to be a guest on our show one day?
I will put the request as soon as I get home.
I think his request just went out. Online.
And the second one, Shaina, have you ever been to Cayman Islands?
No, not yet. Not yet.
Okay, so we're going to WhatsApp you our addresses. I need to pick up an order of ribs from Peppers and send to us.
That seems relatively easy. But here's what I'm going to do. Because I'm a competitive person, my friend Christopher Famous is a diehard United fan. I cannot in good conscience spend my money on a diehard United fan. But Miss Shaina, anything in this world you need,
okay.
Covered, okay?
I will. Thank you.
Kick a man when it's down, will you?
Take care, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan.
Have a good evening. So Eden, writing on that same conversation though, because my follow-up question to you guys would have been, because I know one of the challenges we talk about all the time is about people not banding together around issues because of fear of victimization. Is that something you guys experience?
We are definitely experiencing it. And in light of, like you were referring to with the pandemic and everything, that is a very pertinent point, because it's kind of a double-edged sword. In one way, people were off, you weren't running your normal life for a while during lockdown, and there was a good amount of awareness. There was a good amount of people trying to send out positive messages to each other, relate to each other. But then everyone is so weakened financially by tourism being shut down, the election taking over. So attention starts to go different ways. You find a lot of times people will find different ways to divide themselves. And so what we're having right now is, for instance, there's a big issue with just we talk about it pretty much every show, but the development that's happening here, the scale and the pace of it. And I've been talking to a lot of people they work right next, or they live right next to a construction site. They're scared to speak up because they don't know if the guys are going to get mad that work right next door to them. Some of them are elders. Some of them are too worried about possibly losing their job, or they themselves work in construction. And so they need to try to benefit from it to feed their families. And so I think that we weren't careful enough with keeping the scale of who we cared for committed to our country people. Cayman was very much like, open up, let everybody in. let everything go back to normal. Let's get the money rolling in. And that kind of tilted the scales a little bit to make people feel like they need to go out and get the money and make up for the last 2 years of not having work, especially if you were in tourism. And that means now I can't pay attention to that stuff. I can't be a part of this movement. I got to shift my attention away from what's happening in my community, even if it's degrading it, even if it's making the cost of living too high for my children to own a piece of land in the future. I got to go and get my paycheck now because I'm in all this debt and this and that. And it's understandable, right? Everybody has to eat. Everybody has to make a living. But we have to be conscious that the fear that we play upon today is going to cost our children tomorrow. Somebody has to pay the tab for everything that's going on, whether it be the development, lack of education, lack of health care, or the gaps in those significant issues where people are falling through the cracks. So are we going to take it upon ourselves to make moves now, or are we going to make that fall to our children again? And I think that's something that a lot of people the world over are dealing with as different things come up and different issues start to take your attention. We still need to realize that, what is at stake here is future generations. And when that comes to our climate risks, that comes to how we address opening up new business sectors in our islands and how we relate to one another, food security, which is an issue that we're bringing up on Territories Talk in an upcoming episode, and climate challenges, which we're going to be talking about in an upcoming episode as well. And so I think that media like this and the presentation of here's the problem, but here's a solution, that's got to be the shift now. CPR had some solutions, but we were very much, fight against this juggernaut. We can't let this thing happen in the form that it's happening. Now, I think that all of us, as much as possible, we need to put forward to, okay, this is not a great way to do this. This is going to cost our children in the future. Let's do it this way. Here's a suggestion for a solution. Here's a different way that we can run education. Here's a solution for our traffic that's not just build another road and knock down more trees. And so we got to be solutions minded. I think that's what's really shifting now. And what's sweeping, I think, with the blue-green economy solutions is that this is a chance to create livelihoods. This is a chance to create meaningful jobs. We can pick up a cause and do something like education, address something like mental wellness, address something like the environment, address something like having blue-green livelihoods and not overdeveloping, addressing how government might be overspending money in some certain area. And that is a chance for someone to fill a niche with a business and create some local livelihoods and start getting smart about how we develop our sectors. Like you said, we can't have sustainable development without developing the people. And so we have to reinvest in our people on multiple levels in many ways. And I really think that's the overarching challenge that's facing all of us right now and everyone in the world in that own way.
Yeah, it's some challenging times we find ourselves in. And this year now with the war going on in Europe is going to throw a lot of other dynamics in the mix that is going to keep us, having to constantly be thinking about priorities and, not what's just good for now, but what is good 5-10 years from now for us to attain, put things in the ground. It's like, the other day I remembered why I got involved in politics, like literally. I remember going to pick up one of my nephews from daycare. He was probably about 4, going to make 5. And at that time it was like, what kind of country is he going to encounter in 10 years at 15 and 20 years at 25? And what am I going to do about it if I'm not happy about what I see? And with that, now it was, as Johan said, you start to view things completely differently from just now moment to, God spare life, we're gonna be here 20 years from now, and what is it that we're gonna be having to deal with and manage, and what kind of quality of life, are those 5-year-olds going to have? Because the decisions now are going to affect them then, not the decisions now affecting us just now, but it's a long-term game, which is, goes back again to what Marla was talking about tonight. This is a long game, and we have to accept that they are not going to make room at the table for us. No matter how much we write or plead, every year something is going to come. And as it stands right now, Chris, where I don't know if we touched on it, because I might have been moving around at the time, but this beneficial owner register, is it next year? The end of next year is when it's due
Yes,
to be implemented?
2023.
Okay. Yeah. So that's a conversation again that we need to be petitioning, holding one head and petitioning against it to say, this truly will be detrimental to our economy, and our way of life. And as a result of that, we have to be willing to defend it, at all costs. I mean, the first time I heard Marla spoke, she talked about, we're a small island developing states, but we still Talawa. So we have, we're still, I think we need to channel our slavery rebellion roots, because if we don't, we're going to get put right back on the plantation.
Yes, I agree. There isn't there's only one end game to colonialism ultimately, and so it's really up to us to shift the conversation. Like viewer from Sustainable Cayman about reducing consumption, right, and educating all sectors to do that, to say, hey, what do we actually need here? Do we need to be building this big? Do we need to be importing this much? Focus on local production. So is that local production of energy, local production of food, local production of our expertise? Be growing more researchers, be growing more teachers, be growing more scientists, right? And so this is a real key to it. At every step we can, localize, localize, localize. If you can't do it locally, let's do it regionally, right? If we can't do it regionally, then we start to look to the other areas and everything like that. But and that really does make us. It begs the question of, like we've asked before, could we have our own shipping in the Caribbean? Could we have our own cruise in the Caribbean that we benefit from in bringing people and guests around to have a Caribbean experience? Could we have our own airlines flying and be a little more in control of how goods and people are being moved around the Caribbean, how they're experiencing it, what people are getting paid, the ways in which those businesses are being run, and I think as well we're seeing an acceleration in things. 20 years ago or 30 years ago, you could easily look 10 years down the line and say, okay, I imagine things are going to be like this. I could plan for 10 years from now. Now it's like, can anyone think 5 years down the line? Yeah. I haven't given a thought to 5 years down the line, except for bigger scale issues, in quite a little while. You know what I mean? It's like everything is kind of like, whoa, by next year, this could be totally different. By 2 years from now. So we have Brexit to look at here. We have, like we said, the war. We just saw 100 million go out from the UK to help the Ukraine, when, what we got in storm relief from the UK as being a territory is, right.
Shocking.
So, we have to, I hope people wake up to, this isn't an anti this or anti that thing. This is a pro us stance. And we need to think on localizing production, not just of food, but of our energy, of our smarts, of our talent, cultivating ourselves, and building bridges across this region so that we grow together and let the world know that us Caribbean people are fierce, we're ready, and we're united, and we're gonna make a stamp on this world in a positive way,
Yeah. Yeah, the potential is definitely there. The more conversations we have on this show, it just keeps reinforcing my belief that we have what it takes. We didn't get here through any handouts and assistance, as some people might think. because even those that have gone before us in terms of decolonizing, they had to basically fight their way through it and say, this is what we want as a nation, and stay determined to it, to stick it out. But you basically have an opponent that is telling you they're your partner, and it's like it's a contradiction.
Right.
So it's interesting. So I hope people see how everything is integrated, because we came on tonight to talk about Caribbean economies blacklisting. It touched on cost of living. It's touched on decolonization conversation, because all of these things have to be part and parcel of whatever vision we have for the country. And without knowing the specifics, at the end of the day, we want a good quality of life, and that is going to come through strong economies, because it means that businesses are growing, they're starting up, they're employing people, they're paying taxes, they are providing goods and services, and they're providing community service. So if our businesses don't survive, regardless of what industry they're in, we as a people are in trouble. It means you're going to have to live off of humanitarian aid. That's what it boils down to.
Right.
And again,
and social discord.
Yeah. So we think these things are far-fetched when we see them on the news happening in other countries. But, it started someplace. And these are the things that we have to pay close attention to, because there are examples of, if you don't do it or don't do things right, what could happen and how things could end up. So it's very, we can't say it enough, I think, in terms of, encouraging the entire overseas territories family to, constantly be seeking out the information. Marla has some great reports on her website. I shared it in the comment section. That person should sign up for those newsletters, because again, it's not just about what's happening in Trinidad, Jamaica, Barbados, or the CARICOM islands, but it's, regionally and globally, it will affect all of us at some point. Look at the cost of oil right now. Right now here, our gas price is at, I'm going to tell you what I put in, because $4.90 is for premium. That's $4.90 US currency a gallon.
Lucky you. You know how much it is in Bermuda?
What's your gas prices?
Sorry.
How much fingers you got?
$8?
Wow.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, go opposite to the screen.
$8?
Yeah, US dollars.
Whoa. Well, we're close because we're at 5 CI, so in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think
this is the time to go solar.
I think we're gonna have to have a second show on the cost of living, because whatever we were talking about last year, that's going up now.
Oh yeah. I paid $7.89 CI for a loaf of bread today, just to be able to have the good quality organic whole grain bread.
Wow.
So that's that you're looking at almost $10 US.
Yeah.
And this is a cooperative bakery in California, actually a place I visited when I lived there, and that's been around forever. And they're a fantastic business model where the maintenance manager of the bread of the bakery has shares in it. They give, they want everyone to, it's a cooperative, so they really run it like everybody has a stake in it, and it's fantastic at that. So I'm happy to support them, but man, keeping the lights on in any store, keeping, so it's a real issue. There's no separate issues, right? There's no, you can bring it all back to how is it that we are going to live right? Again, like you said, looking for the life of your nephew, looking out for his future. That's really what we needs to be our ultimate kind of metric that we test things by.
Yeah. Yep.
So, Shaina, you want to talk about our upcoming shows?
Sure. I was trying to find the updated flyer, actually, for climate resilience. So I am.
Yeah, I sent it to you via email.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
So let me take this down, and I pull that up. But
So Eden,
I'm
while
looking.
Shayna's finding that, Eden, what's give us something brief, positive news going on in Cayman Islands.
Positive news that is going on. Well, actually tomorrow we're having the first test of a new app that's been launched for national emergency services. So they have issued the information that you can get an app on your phone now that will send an alert in the event of tsunami, earthquake, storm updates, and different types of things. And tomorrow they're going to be having their first test with it tomorrow at around 9 a.m. So I've downloaded the app, and we're hoping that everything works smooth, and we're going to be able to have be a little more resilient by having quicker spread of information during emergency situations and critical situations. There's also been we're seeing some development on people getting more aware of the how development is impacting neighborhoods. And some awareness is spreading about this, and we're going to be seeing some national movement on controlling some of the scale and pace of development, and especially the things like 3 o'clock in the morning, pouring cement with stadium lights in residential neighborhoods and keeping kids up on a weeknight, making noise on a Sunday. So these things have now come to light. CNS wrote a brilliant article about it, covering it, and so hopefully we're going to be seeing some progress made on that, but there is more awareness coming to light, and hopefully we're going to see development get a little bit more humane here and culturally appropriate, let's just say, because you can't have sacred Sundays with somebody jackhammering outside your window at 8:30 in the morning in a residential neighborhood. So
That's the hope.
yeah, it is the hope, but luckily there's more, like we said, some of those people who have been afraid to speak up about it and have feared for their own well-being or their own livelihoods, they're finding some voice. And so I was happy to be able to lend a voice to that and help that news article happen in some small way. So we just, we got to keep strong. We got to keep vocal. And, this is where your home is your home. And you have a right to enjoy that. And that goes for however it is, whether it be litter, people speeding in your neighborhood, whatever it might be. And in this case, I had somebody pounding rebar 20 feet outside my son's window at 6:30 in the morning, jackhammering at 8:30 in the morning. It's insane, and it shouldn't be happening anymore. So we're making some progress on that front. Everything's a long game. Got to be patient. Got to keep your wits about you and stay sane and breathe. Love more. Do the next good thing.
Sister. So
there we go.
Shannon, would you like to elaborate on this?
Sure. I'm looking forward to this topic. We'll be talking about climate resilience and environmental protection. And I think we have a great lineup of guests. Honorable Walter Robban from Bermuda. Is he the Deputy Premier?
He's the Deputy Premier, yes.
Deputy Premier. Awesome.
And he's also the Minister of the Environment.
Yes. So he will be joining us, and this will be on Wednesday, the 30th of March. So we're gonna be slightly off schedule with that, but we're cooking up a pot for you guys on the 23rd. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, the 30th, and a very good friend of mine. I know her from high school days, and she has become a global voice, I would say, for us here as it relates to the environment and climate resilience, environmental protection. Angela Burnett Penn, she will also be joining us. So again, this is our next scheduled show that we'll be doing, and we're really looking forward again to learning more about the importance of these areas to our everyday life, because again, sometimes these things pop up when you have the big global climate conferences, but then when we bring it home, we don't necessarily know how this is going to affect us. What is it going to look like? Why should I be concerned, essentially? Is it something just for the politicians to worry about, or us as everyday citizens? We need to make sure that we understand what's at stake. So I definitely know the Prime Minister of oh my goodness, what was the Tuvalu? Was it Chris that gave his speech in knee-high water
Yes.
to illustrate how high the sea levels had already started rising in his country, and basically, you know, the need for urgent action from a climate change standpoint. So, you know, yeah, that definitely caught my attention. So it's
Yeah, I
something
did.
that we have to really pay close attention to.
Hmm. Yeah, and once again, we want to thank our media partners, ZJB Radio in Montserrat, PJFE in Saba, CBN Radio in the Virgin Islands, Cayman Marl in Cayman Islands, Radio Turks and Caicos in Turks and Caicos Island, and Channel 82 here in Bermuda. Hopefully, sometime soon we'll be announcing yet another media partner.
Yeah. Awesome.
Always growing, little by little. This is
Yeah.
it's fantastic.
Mhm.
So very thankful for the support. It's incredible.
Yeah.
All right, family.
All right. So until next time.
Yes. Any
we-
closing words, Eden?
Just once again thankful to be a part of this journey, and I know Johan was giving it up to us a lot, but really it's the panelists and the discussion that make this. Yeah, the three of us can sit here and talk about everything under the sun and come up with really good things to talk about, but it's these guests that we have on that are really expanding the mind and letting people know that we are all connected in this region, and we're all connected as overseas territory citizens and Caribbean people. And let's keep the unity flowing. And it's a huge thank you to everyone who watches, everyone who supports, and a huge thank you to our panelists who come on the show. It's such an incredible learning experience.
Definitely.
Shaina?
So again, until next time, we looking forward to our future discussions, but make sure you've liked our Facebook page. So again, when we schedule our shows, you automatically will get the reminders, as well as on the YouTube channel. And if you missed any past shows or you want to share them, you can easily go back to the Facebook page or our YouTube channel and find them, and, you know, make sure let's get the word out as far and as wide as we can.
And for me, I just want to once again thank my my TT family and my extended family, including that self-described rabid Liverpool supporter, Johan Moxam. Have a great night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.